classmates. Check one. All right, let's see. Are we live? Yes, we are live. All right. Just making sure. Is everybody well? Hey, Bonnie, Jim, the Lees, Ed, Keith, Roger. I'm starting to formulate my concept for a beginner lesson series, like a progressive series. I'm not exactly sure like how I'm going to post it, because my idea is to kind of treat it like a weekly lesson. And why is this suddenly capture top moments? Oh, weird. Create highlight video. Oh, funny. And so one thing I want to do is like an exercise, and then like a chord of the week. Like maybe start with an E minor chord, something very, very simple chord, and maybe a strumming groove of the week. And again, that would start out super easy. It might even, and at the same time, I would be teaching whole like notation reading, and not necessarily anything that would be, complex. Just and it would have that whole. There will not be a quiz on this kind of sentimentality. That I don't want people to freak out by like, oh, I'm going to need to learn to read this notation. But the idea is that if I have the notation as part of the lesson and it's there for every musical example, then eventually you'll start to be able to read a notation. And I will probably do both tab and music notation at the same time. The question is how often would I release them? Because I could do a whole series, I could do like 30 of them. Of course, it would take me forever. I could do 30 of them and release them all at once, but then that always causes a lot of problems because then people get 30 notifications that a video has been released. But I also know that what I'm going to show is going to be pretty basic stuff, especially in the first, 10 lessons, that you might have it down within a day. So you'd be like, where's the lesson 2? I want to go to lesson 2. So I don't know. I may have to figure out. I may do some kind of like completely separate thing where you actually pay to subscribe to it, and then you can go to that site. I could do it maybe with a different website, not YouTube but somebody else, and then have people pay for that. But I like the YouTube model. I like the royalty model. I just don't know if those videos would end up getting many views. So maybe what I'll do is. I'm really what I want to do is I kind of like with writing television. When you write for episodic television, you create what's called a show Bible, and a show Bible will have all the characters in it with their backstories, and it's all this stuff that you can cull from as you're writing episodes. And so that's kind of what I want to create, kind of a show Bible for a lesson series, if that makes sense. So I think it would be. I think it would be a pretty cool way of doing it. The only thing, again, I will not be using songs. So I'll have anything, existing songs, because I don't want to have takedown notices or copyright infringements. So that's where it's going to be a little bit like bummer, because if I were teaching one-on-one, or when I always had songs that like, oh, we can learn this song or that song, and you can. Every song would, maybe push you a little further into skill sets, and then the next week I would teach you another song that would be a little harder, and or it would show you something, like the first time you learned power chords, which of course that's not the right way to play that. But anyway, so it would be like each video would have like maybe 3 or 4 elements. One would be, okay, let's do this warm up, right? And it would just I might even say start at the 5th fret, and would just do that, and then it would be the chord of the week and a strumming groove of the week, and then maybe a song-ish, something like that. But where I can kind of sneak in a song, but then it's like a parody of a song or something like that. Call it Roger Gunn. So anyway, that's kind of I'm starting to conceptualize it now. Whether it gets from conception to planning to record it, that's another thing altogether. But I am kind of struggling a little bit to come up with new ideas for new videos. I do have one I want to do, like the hardest lick I've ever learned. I do have that concept that I want to put out there, and it'd be funny because I'll probably put the tab up so that people can try to get it down as well. But it's an original thing that I did. Christmas songs coming up in 6 months. Yeah, that's some Christmas songs are public domain, so you could, carols are almost all public domain. So I could teach those without any concerns. I mean, the books, the cheesy, beginner books, they will often have Jingle Bells or Mary Had a Little Lamb and stuff like that. And I don't really want to do that. The goal wouldn't necessarily be learning how to read music, although my goal would be that you would accidentally learn how to read music, which would be really cool. Or at least learn how to read rhythmic notation, things like that. So, so my goal is, and it would be pretty slow. That's why I would want to release more than one at a time, because I feel like you would be like, well, I can play a E minor and let it ring for 4 beats, and that would be lesson 1, and then I would think lesson 2, I would teach like an A2 chord, and then it would be going back and forth just between those two. But again, it's all just built on just kind of developing some dexterity in the fingers. And I definitely think, it would be, I would try to make it progressive. So if I sit down in advance and formulate it and kind of, like I said, create a show Bible and a story arc, then I do think that it would be progressive enough that you would get better with every lesson. So anyway. All right, now I have my phone on because I may get a call and have to leave, but I have a kind of a weird feeling in my jaw right here, and it happened yesterday morning. And I thought when I woke up I had it, and I thought, oh, did I sleep funny on my pillow or something like that? And so I called, but then today it was persisting, and I could feel it when I bite down. So I think I may have never had a root canal or anything like that before, but I think that I might have some tooth issue. So my dentist is literally just 3 doors down, and so if I've got an appointment for tomorrow morning, but if they can get me in today, because I'd rather, because with all the COVID protocols, if you have a temperature when you show up, they can't see you, and it's like, so if I have like an abscess tooth or something weird happening, you could very well have a fever from that, and from an infection, and then it's like, well, you can't go to the hospital to get a tooth X-ray, So I don't know. I want to get taken care of before if it's something that's infected, then I don't want to have a temperature again. So, and he can do root canals if if it's a simple one. So, but like I said, I don't know it's that. It may be something simple, or it may be TMJ issue. I've never had that before. I don't grind my teeth, but I clench my teeth. Part of the reason I like doing this is I don't clench my teeth when I'm talking. Obviously, you can't. But when I'm working, I'm clenching my teeth almost the entire. I catch myself. My jaw, my muscles here get so sore because I'm constantly kind of when I'm concentrating, clenching my teeth. So that could have caused some problem too. I don't chew ice. There's typical things that people get when they have, that cause the need for root canals. But I don't know. Anyway, I'll take it as whatever happens. No, no. God bless you, Eric. Thank you. Yeah, no, I don't have dental insurance, and I know it's not cheap, but it's like, it's just part of life. You got to pay for these things. And I'm hoping if I have to get a root canal, my dentist can do it, because I really like my new dentist, and if he can do it, it'd be great. Because he's right there. I don't have to worry about driving home or anything like that. So, but yeah, it's just weird sensitivity that I'm, and it's more of a dull ache up high, it's more like in the jaw and not really so much in the tooth. So it may it may be just a cold, and people are like, when are we going to talk about chord progressions? I'm so sorry. We've all become friends over here. So I know that I get comments all the time like, when are you going to teach? Okay, I'm going to start teaching now. But we've been talking about chord progressions, and the thing that I've been wanting you to learn was knowing the basic 6 chords in any major key, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the 1, 4, 5, which are the major chords, in the key of G, that would be G, C, and D, and then the minor chords would be A minor, B minor, and E minor. If you know those 6, it makes it a lot easier to figure out a song in the key of G, because we talked about this before. There are, in Western music, there are 12 major chords and 12 minor chords. So that's 24 chords, and if you have to, when you're figuring out a song, it's all about trial and error. It's like, what's the next chord? No. Oh, there it is. No. Oh, there it is. So if you can eliminate 18 of the chords, then it makes it a lot easier to kind of guesstimate the next chord, as it were. So we started there, and then again, that's when it comes to figuring out someone else's song or doing transcriptions or whatever, knowing the key, knowing the most likely chords is really, really helpful. It saves a lot of time. But when you're writing, okay, so when you're analyzing, there's all these rules you can use to kind of figure out what's going on. When you're writing, you can throw all those rules out the door. If you can make a song going G to G sharp to G flat, if you can make that work and make it into a song, then it basically breaks a lot of rules, but it doesn't matter because you're writing something new. But if you were to go back and analyze it, and that was a big Sex Pistols song or something, it sounds like punk rock. There's probably someone that's come along and go, well, technically what he did was he was really not playing the flat major 2 chord. He was playing the tritone substitution of the 5 chord. And, and this would also be the tritone substitution of the 4 chords. So you could technically justify it. And that's what people do after the fact. After you've written your massively large, huge hit of a song, one of the ways to find the key, Eric, is I always say, it always helps just to start to try to find the bass note, the root of whatever chord you're trying to figure out. That helps. If you can figure out that, then the tonality of the chord will generally line up with the key. So if you're playing a song in G, and the next note is this note, and you're like, there it is. Okay. Then you go, okay, so the chord built on A in the key of G is A minor. So now, that could help you, figure out what the next chord is. Figure out what key the song is in. Usually what I do is, sometimes people say it's the first chord in the song, but that's not always the case. It's about the case maybe 50% of the time. Like in a blues, yeah, it starts on the 1 chord. Starts on the key. But it's not always the case, because you could start on the 4 chord. And so that was, starting on a 4, and that's not that's a pretty common kind of chord progression. So then that doesn't help you with the key, though. If you go, oh, well, then we're in the key of C. So you're not. You're actually in the key of G, but it starts on C. It's like, also, I always use this example. Technically, we're playing E, A, and D, and that's the 5, 1, and 4 in the key of A. But we wouldn't end that song on A. We would end that song on E. So there's an example of a song that ends on a chord that's not the tonal center. But I would say that this song is not in A. It's in A diatonic major, but technically it would be kind of an E mixolydian. I sometimes might call that like E blues. I'm touching my face, which is one of our rules here. If I touch my face, hey Josh, good to see you. If I touch my face, we can take a drink. So that's one of the drinking game rules. If I touch my face. Also, if I use air quotes, if I say I had a band in high school called, if I mention that I played all the guitars on Apex Legends, if I, let's see, what are some, if I drop my pick, that's a sip. If I drop a thumb pick, that's a double sip. You get 2 sips because you really should not drop a thumb pick because that's just on your thumb. So, well, we've got a bunch of Garys here, so Gary may need to post them, yeah. I'm sure you've got them very handy that you can copy and paste. Apex cheers. Yeah, Dennis is like, is Gary not here? Uh-oh. You have water pickle juice. Oh my gosh, that's not good. Yeah, if I say there's not going to be a quiz on this, which I don't know if you guys saw, but it showed up in the store. Let me pull up the store real quick. This is pretty funny. You guys click on this. Like, I think the coffee mug is freaking dope. I think that would be. So if you go to my channel and then there's all those tabs. Here, go to my channel. There's the tabs. It says videos, home, videos, playlist, community, store, channels, about. So if you click on. Oh, channels. What's that? Do I have any? Oh, those are channels I follow. Okay. So here's the store tab. And there's a mug and it says there won't be a quiz on this, which I just think is pretty freaking hilarious. Josh is the son of a pastor friend of mine from our church that they moved. Where are you now, Josh? Where's your dad? Where are your parents living? But Josh has been watching me on YouTube for years, and he saw me playing at church for years too. And he knows my son. Yeah, well, and there will be, sometimes there are quizzes, but when I'm getting into foundational stuff about what we're talking about, oftentimes I'll say there won't be a quiz on it. I don't want your eyes to glaze over. I don't want you to check out just because, like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't understand it. And that's fine. What happens is, and I've said this before, I've used this as an example. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was 14 or 15 when I subscribed to Guitar Player magazine. And I would read it cover to cover, but understand maybe 10% of what I was reading. Whether they were talking about theory, that stuff maybe I understood better than the gear stuff, but like the ads, I wouldn't understand what is distortion, what is overdrive, what is compression, what is all this, and so I would understand about 10% of it. But the next issue I read cover to cover, the next month I'd understand 11%, and then I'd understand 12% or 14 or 19% or whatever, and eventually I got to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, most everything in the magazine makes sense to me. Unless they're interviewing someone who's just like really high, then I probably back down to 10%. But the idea is that if I kind of start inserting some of this foundational, whether it be music theory or music reading or things like that, if I just kind of insert that in here occasionally, then you'll start to pick up on it. Okay, so that's what that means when I say there won't be a quiz on it. It just means, look. Maybe someday you'll understand this. Life is one long quiz, isn't it? So anyway, okay. No, life is a final. That's my next coffee mug. Life is a final. I had a band in high school called Life is a Final. All right, cheers. You knew I was going to do it. You knew it. You're sitting there going, oh, he's going to say I had a band in high school called. You just knew it. All right. So, let's see. They didn't say I need a $50 cable to use it properly. Oh, Rocksmith for $9. That's funny. Oh my gosh. So is Rocksmith one of those when you hook your guitar up to your phone, and so you need a quarter-inch to Thunderbolt cable? It's like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I'm always suspicious when they say, oh, it's only this much, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know is there's all these other fees and subscriptions. So anyway, so what we did was we went through the chords in the key of G. We had the 6 main chords, and then what I did, and I posted it in the Discord page, which I'll send a link to right now. I don't know, Josh, if you have joined the Discord, but there's a Discord here you can join. I'll send it, and all the homework assignment, all the paperwork that I create, I'm generally scanning and uploading to here, and it's in the page Tom's Bookmarks, I think. Yeah. So anything I talk about that I write down, I try to scan. Here's this. Okay. East End. In the magazine American Songwriter, there is a Songwriter University section at the end that does a good column on songwriting stuff, and it's good to check out. Very cool. Yeah, hilarious. So yeah, the thing is, right now, most of my songwriting is I'm writing with others. You know, like when I'm writing music now. In fact, I just had I'm working on doing a publishing deal with Universal Music Group Publishing, and they had a meeting, and they brought me up at the meeting, which is hilarious to be, you know, New York City in an office up on the 50th floor. They're bringing up me, and they're like, okay. And my contact is the head of the department, right? Like, he's the boss. And I don't know him, but I have a friend that knows him, and that's how I got recommended. So they're like, so how did you? They want my story, right? So right before I started this live stream, I had to write a long email saying basically, here's how. Basically, they're like, why is a 58-year-old guy writing songs with Justin Bieber? And so I kind of had to. Explain all that to them. So I'm sure they were in this office and they're like going, why are we signing this guy? And you know, it's just funny. It's an administration deal, so I'm not getting an advance or anything like that. I don't need an advance. But it's just funny because now I'm not so much writing complete songs, but I am writing kind of the foundational parts of the songs. Pretty much everyone I'm working with, when I'm collaborating, I'm the one that kind of gets the whole song started. There wouldn't be a song if I didn't write the part that I'm writing. So, and then that gets worked on by, could be one other person or 10 other people sometimes. So it's just the way pop is done. So what I did was the next thing I did after we discovered the chords in the key, the basic chords in the key of G, is we did this sheet here. Okay, and this you can find at the Discord. Most recent thing I posted. And we took that, so it's G major, A minor, B minor, C, D, and E minor. And we made those chords the opposite of what they are. So A minor, we made A major. And B minor, we made B major, or B7. I like using the 7th chords better. C, we made C minor. D, we made D minor. And E, we made E major. And we justified each one of them, or we said, okay, if we go to that chord, where does it want to take you? And so, like with the, I'm trying to remember, some of those progressions were kind of cool though. Let's see, with the A7 wanted to go to D. So if I had a progression that was like, that's kind of a cool progression, right? And so that A7 is not in the key of G, but it makes that, it's a lot stronger leading to the D chord than just E minor. That's kind of a soft, what I would call maybe a soft leading, but this is a more, demands more, more from the next chord. It's like, okay, we got to go to the D chord now. We don't have a choice. From here, we could have gone anywhere, but from here, we had to go to the D. So, and then on the B7, like, you could have a progression that's maybe same progression. No, I'll go do. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So we go G to D, E minor to. So I substituted for the D, I used a B7. And the B7, which is not in the key of G because there's a D sharp in it, led really nice to the E minor chord, which is the 6th chord. So it's kind of the 5 of the 6th chord. And then the other one we do a lot is, it's pretty common actually. Make it the 4 chord minor. And that was where I took the C and made it major, the C major, I made it minor, C minor. And that's kind of a sad sound. Of course, minor chords always sound sad, but it sounds particularly sad when they used to be major. They used to be happy, but now they're sad. I don't know what happened. Hey, everything's really good in the world. Oops. Everything's really good in the world. Yeah, we're doing great. Oh no. Dropped my pick. Okay, so anyway, I'm here to entertain you. That's really, you guys aren't even typing. You're so entertained right now. Okay, and so that's an example. The D minor is one that's kind of a little weird, but D minor is the relative minor to F major. So F, and F major we're going to talk about today. So there's like 3 chords, major chords that are not in the key of G that we're going to talk about. And then the last one was E7, which E7 really wants to go to A minor. But it could also go to A7, which wants to go to D7, which wants to go to G. So you get the circle of fifths, the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 5. Remember, we talked about that. So that was all in the previous lesson. And so we're pretty much caught up at this point. And don't worry, there's no quiz on the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 5. But if you watch the video, you can find... B7 can be tricky, but this one's not bad. It's, if you can play D7, you can play B7. And the way I'm playing B7 is, and I believe that John and Paul traveled on a bus across Liverpool because a kid across town knew how to play a B7 chord. So they actually got on a bus. There's so many great stories like that. I love, it's amazing. You know what's amazing to me about the Beatles too is how many photographs of them there are, even before they were famous. I mean, think about it. When back in the day, you had to develop. Film wasn't cheap, and cameras, good cameras weren't cheap. And now everybody has a camera on their phone, so it makes sense that there's lots of pictures of stuff. But I'm amazed at how many pictures. And I've got like 2 or 3 books of just photos of the Beatles, and one's called Unseen Photos, and I bought, somebody gave it to me, and I was like, wow, this is, I don't know any of these photos, I don't recognize any of them, and it's just amazing to me how many people really saw something there that they thought was worth, spending the money to take pictures. Oh, Gary asked, the 5 of the 6 leading into the 6 was the light bulb. Oh yeah, when that B7, and with one of my favorite band, right now favorite band is Radiohead. Creep, which is their least favorite song. They actually will occasionally play it, but very, very rarely. And it's their biggest song, but they just won't play it because they don't like it. But the song's technically in the key of G, and it goes G to B7 to C major to C minor. Okay, and oh, is that true? The Kodak came out with digital first. Yeah, that's tough. It was tough. They just couldn't see the future. They couldn't see it. I mean, they did, and then they didn't. It's weird. And so this is basically 1, major 3, 4, minor 4. And that's the whole song. It's also a Lana Del Rey song that she got slammed for, because it's one thing to write a song around that chord progression. It's another thing to basically copy the melody from Radiohead. But it's also a Holly song. I forget which song. And I think their song actually has a bridge or a B section that has a different chord progression in it. But sure, you can always make the 3 major, but you have to justify it, Michael. So the cool thing about the 3 chord being major, hey, Jan. The cool thing about the 3 chord being major is you can take it. And like I said, I like one of the 7th on these because it makes it a little bit more sad, or a pure F or pure B works fine too. But the nice thing about that B is it wants to go to 2 different chords. Okay, it wants to lead either to the C or it wants to lead to the E minor. Either one of those. So you've got in the case of the major 3, you've got 2 places that it wants to go to. And again, that's quote unquote a rule, right? But when you're writing, you can do whatever you want. If you want to go to B flat from there, you can. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss in your opinion? Wow, Michael, that's a really tough question. But one of the things that happened with the Beatles, in particular with John and Paul, was they almost felt like competition with each other. So they're always constantly one-upping each other. Everybody knows that early on they co-wrote most songs, and that's why they're Lennon and McCartney songs. And then, once they got to Rubber Soul, they started to be a little bit more split because. For tax purposes, their accountants told them to buy a house out in the country. So Ringo, John, and George all bought estates out in the country to save money on taxes. And I'm not sure exactly how that worked, but I think if you bought a house or something, it was you had more write-offs. Paul stayed in London. In fact, he was still living during the peak of Beatlemania. He was living with. The Asher family, Jane Asher, his girlfriend, and Peter Asher, and he really liked them. They lived in London, and I'm not, I should look up the address. I wonder if they live close to where the Beckhams live, in Holland Park. But is Keith? You're in London, right? Or no, you're in England. Is it Keith? I don't know if Keith is there today. Yeah, the B7 is a great sound. But so Paul stayed in London, and so what they would do then, they would write songs and then come together and record them, or come together and meet. But Paul had a room upstairs, that kind of in the attic or the top floor of the Asher family house, and Peter Asher, who went on to become a big record producer. And I met Peter just a couple of years ago. About a year and a half ago, and we had a great conversation. I asked him if the family still had the house, and he said no. But I asked him about all this stuff and about Paul having to sneak out the back because there would be kids camped out in the front. Everything that I'd read about that era from a couple different books, Peter said was totally true. So it was pretty cool. And Paul loved playing games. They would play word games because both, I think, Peter's and Jane's parents were doctors. And so they were really smart, and they had lots of books, they had a library and lots of books, and they played word games and things like that. So so Paul really kind of really liked being there, and so he didn't actually get his own place for quite a while. I think it was 1966 is when he got his own place. Now, as far as which one of them the best writer, I'll tell you, some of my favorite Beatles songs are the George Harrison ones, especially the ones that aren't too weird, okay? Like Something is a great song. Um, While My Guitar Gently Weeps is a really good song. And part of the reason for that is because I'm sure George was writing as many songs as Paul and John, but he only got to one track per side, right? So there might be 6 tracks or 7 tracks on a side, and George would only get one. So it was cherry picking for him. It was like, what's the best song I wrote? Now, I think Tomorrow Never Knows, is that him? I'm not a fan of on Sgt. Pepper. There's a couple songs he wrote where it was like, and his early songs, like on the first records, weren't as great. It's so weird because I really feel like John was such a rock and roller, and so many of his songs would be like, you can tell it's John melody because they were very monosyllabic, not monosyllabic. They were monotone. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. He would really sit. He would move the chords around, but he would sit on a melody, and so. And I love that, and that's very idiomatic Beatles kind of sound. But Paul just had a knack for melody. I don't think any of them particularly had a knack for lyric. So there's a lot better lyrics out there than Beatles songs. But I think Dylan had a knack for lyrics, but he had virtually no knack for melody, in my opinion. But in the Beatles, one of my favorite records of theirs is Rubber Soul, where they're trying to sound like Bob Dylan, and I think that's actually one of the better records because the lyrics and the melodies all kind of come together, and the production on the records is off the charts, and that's a collaborative thing. But I would have to say I would skew towards Paul being the better songwriter, But I'm sure I'd have people say I'm off my rocker, that John was much better, or George was the best, or But that's my rationale. I feel like George's songs have a good rap because he got to cherry pick his best songs. When he finally came out with his own records, you could tell, okay, well, he's not every song is a gem, but there are a lot of Beatles songs that aren't gems, and they're all pretty much ones written by John or Paul. And then John's more monosyllabic, and then Paul would be more interesting melodically. And to me, the most important part of a pop song is the melody. The lyrics are almost irrelevant. And the chord structure. I don't know if any of you listened to that song I told you to listen to, but the song "Mad" by Neo. If you listen to that song, it's called "Mad" (M-A-D) by Neo. Check it out. And the thing I love about that song is, and it's really what populates pop music today, and particularly 5 years ago, and like the 5 years prior to that, there was about a 5-year window where pretty much pop songs were the same 4 chords over and over and over again. And so that put huge pressure on whoever was writing the melody. And so, I could have a song, well, like I take Home to Mama, which I wrote with Sam Hook. Now, it started with me, and it was a vibe. Right? But it's basically D, B minor, A, G. So it's 1, 6, 5, 4. And nothing special about it, but the vibe they liked. So that's what I created. I created the chords, but I also created the vibe of the song. But Sam came up with a melody, and he's kind of imitating my guitar. And then he changes the melody, and he does that, and then he changes it again, and changes it again. And on the Neo song, the crazy thing about that, I see the question. Hold on a second. The crazy thing about the Neo song is that it's the same chord progression for the most part, and he comes up with, ultimately, if you include the bridge, 6 freaking awesome melodies, and you can all take a sip because I'm touching my face. Almost a double sip because that was a long rub of my eye. And I mentioned at the beginning of this broadcast, I may get a phone call from my dentist who's right next door, and saying that I can come in because I may have some weird thing going on up here. I'm not sure if it's just I slept funny on it, but when I bite down, I can feel something. Like I got something stuck in my tooth, but I don't. So I'm afraid I may have I may have to get a root canal or something. I've never had that done, but anyway, hopefully not. Anyway, but the Neo song, he's like super generous with melodies. It's like every one of those melodies you could write a whole song around. He could have had 6 songs. And it actually, and I think it works. Mad wasn't a hit, but it's a really good track on the record. The record had the album that came out. That album had a couple hits on it. And I saw the question. I think Michael asked about doing different keys, and that might not be a bad idea because I'm kind of struggling what to talk about. So maybe we'll do this same thing here. I'm doing in this key. I can do in the key of D, so we can do some different keys. And in the process, you might learn some new chords and some new progressions. So who knows what'll come of it. But one of the things that I did as a baby songwriter, and pretty much everyone I know, okay, let's see. Okay, I don't know where's Diane? Is Diane there? Diane, you're there, right? Oh yeah, there you are. No, George Harrison wrote some impressive songs. Yeah, definitely. I have a story about this, but I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to. Well, I don't have to name names, so I can do it without naming names. So I'll change the names just to protect the innocent, or in this case, actually the guilty. But one of the travails of of a new songwriter is they have way too many changes in the song. Not chord changes, but too many sections. I'll have a student come in, and say, "Hey, check out the song I wrote," and then they sing me the song, and it sounds like 8 songs in one. And I'm like, you know what? You just wrote a whole album. You need to break those into 8 different songs, and you need to make that into a song, and that's kind of cool. That could be its own song. Now find out what would be the verse and the bridge for that, and then that sounds like a good verse, but it's not a very good chorus. So let's try to figure out where that would go. And so that's often what's happened with new songwriters. They write a song that has way too many changes. So no, it's not story time yet, but soon. Okay, so now there's 3 more chords I'm going to show in the key of G here that we're going to we might be able to. I think we can justify. Yeah, we can justify these. And they're all 3 major chords, and they're all chords that happen pretty commonly in the key. Let's see. Actually, yeah, there's 3 chords. All right. So the first one is F. So in the key of G, there's an F sharp, right? So obviously F wouldn't be in there, but that's a very melodic John song. That's a John. If whoever's singing it generally wrote it, and that was still at a time when the Beatles were collaborating. John and Paul were more collaborating. That was from Help. But that's an example. The song's in the key of G. Right, there's the 5 chord. 4, 1, 4, flat, 7 major, 4. Okay. Okay, and the F is the 4 of C, and the 4-1 in this case is the amen cadence, right? In the key of G, that would be Roger, Bruce, you got 2 sips out of this. Yeah, Neo's a pretty smooth writer, and he wrote songs for other people too, so it wasn't like it was just his songs. And then, so there's an example of the F chord working, and basically he went from F to, and I love that. So that's the flat. So I'm going to rewrite our 6 chords. All right? Because, you know, we did on this, and again, this is up on the Discord. If you want to do a screenshot, go for it. There's a lot of information on there. Kind of messy. Oh, funny. Yeah, I love Pat Metheny. Let's see. So he's definitely one of my big influences. In fact, I didn't realize how big of an influence he was until I listened to myself solo and I go, oh, shoot, I'm trying to sound like Pat Metheny. I don't even realize it. Okay, so the main chords, the 6 chords in the key of G that are most common are here, like thus, all right? And it's the same thing I wrote before, so nothing new here so far. We're going to justify, we're going to have 3 more chords we're going to talk about. And so far with these 6 and these 5 that we added, okay, that brings us up to 11, right? And I'm going to add 6, yeah. And I'm adding 3 more, so that takes up to 14. So we're past the halfway point of the potential 24 major and minor triads that we have in Western music. So we're actually now expanding our palette, our sonic palette for songwriting. If we were to only write songs using these chords, that'd be fine. You could have an entire career on that. Dylan probably has largely done that. However, you know, if you want to broaden your sonic landscape, then you start bringing in some of these other chords, like the major 2 or major 3 or the minor 2 or the minor 4 and 5, and the major 6 chord. So those are all, you know, kind of, and I often call those money chords. It's like that. I wrote a song that an artist recorded, but it hasn't been released yet. But it's like a. And it kind of goes like, it's a nice soul song. There's the money chord. It makes everybody go, what? You know? And so I love those chords. And that in this case, I'm technically in the key of A flat. I'm playing 6, 3, 4, 1, 6. Major 3 to the 4. So kind of that Radiohead major 3 chord. And so that and that song hopefully will come out soon. We'll see. But you never know. I've written so many songs that never got released. But the 3 chords we're going to talk about, the first one is that F chord, okay? So the F chord, which is a whole step below the root, kind of wants to go, it doesn't have to. There's no obligation for it to go there, but it kind of wants to go to the C chord. It's kind of the 4 of the 4. So, and so the F chord, which is the, it's the flat major 7. Okay, so if we were to count up 7 degree tones in the key of G, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, we flat that from F sharp down to F, a half step, and we make it major, we end up with this chord here. Does F minor, would F minor lead to, oh, I'm sorry. Let's see, I'm sorry. There was a question from Michael. Michael, your question was So you say you have a progression in D. It's D major 7 to A minor to G major 7 and then B flat major 7. How can you justify using the B flat in the key of D? The B flat would be the, you can. In fact, we're going to talk about that one. That's the flat major 6. So that's going to come up not next, but it'll be the third chord we talk about. And I'll show the most common. Now, when you bring in seventh chord, you're talking about, Michael, you're talking about seventh chords. Jazz, kind of different rules. There are even less rules for jazz harmonies. Usually, though, like for example, one of the most famous jazz pieces is Giant Steps by John Coltrane. And Giant Steps is in 3 keys that are a whole step apart from each other. The key of B, the key of G, and the key of E flat. Basically, it's just 5 ones or 2 5 ones in those keys. And let's see. I broke a nail last night filming for church. I dropped my pick and I started using my hands, and I dropped my pick at church, and the whole congregation all took sips. Let's see. I'm thinking I might open up a session here. But anyway, I don't want to get too deep into jazz harmony. But basically, you'll find in jazz there's a lot of 2-5-1 kind of stuff going on. It's interesting, the chord progression that you mentioned, Michael. It goes that A minor actually is not in the key. If you're in the key of D, A minor is not there. But the G major 7, like it, D major, like G, like that progress, like G major. Yeah, and you could go right from the B flat to the D major, because the B flat kind of implies a D minor, so you don't need a chord. You don't need to go anywhere from there. I mean, I like that chord progression. It's nice. It reminds me of, if you know Pat Metheny. He had that. I think it's called Face Dance. And he's basically going from B minor to B flat major. And again, it's, the melody. He's playing basically over B flat. He's playing B flat leading. And actually, what's interesting, I'm getting totally sidetracked here, but squirrel. The thing that sounds really cool over B flat major 7 is he's an A minor pentatonic, and then when he gets to the B minor chord, he can play B minor pentatonic. So I noticed when I saw him live recently for the first time, just with a couple years ago, I was in like the second row, so I could see his hands really well. And he played maybe 1.5 million notes, and I didn't hear a bad note the whole night. It's like he didn't hit not one mistake. But I didn't realize how much he relied on pentatonic scales. But he would use them in ways like he wouldn't, like most people would go, oh, okay, B flat major, so I'll do the B major, B major pentatonic. He wouldn't do that. He would pick a pentatonic that didn't even play the root. Like this would be over B flat, this would be the 7th, the 9th, the 3rd, the sharp 4, the 6th, the 7th, the 9th, the 3rd, the sharp 4. So you get the. So you'd have some really interesting tones in his solos, and then over the minor, over the B minor, I think he would also play F minor pentatonic, but he played a lot of pentatonic scales, which kind of really shocked me. So anyway, that kind of answers that question. Let's see, there was another question. There's so many questions. And then that song Phase Dance, going. That's just the vibe. That's a song. It says I'm sure someone's coming along and go, well, it works because this is and this is the whatever. But It just works because Pat Metheny made it work with the melody. The melody makes it work. The melody can really, really justify any chord progression if you've got a good melody. I think Kurt Cobain showed that. He would write, hey, Avito, Kurt Cobain wrote some of the best melodies over some of the most kind of obtuse chord progressions. So he was a master. I mean, he was a really good pop songwriter. Leo asks, I think, well, there was let's see, question from Michael regarding chord progression. Oh, yeah, okay. And then Leo, Tom, is to know when to use the right chord, the right spot of the song, being embellished, or else using seventh, sus, etc. Yeah, I'm not even really talking about seventh chords per se, but the more chords you know, the more likely you are to use. You know, a chord is a funny thing because you probably, like if you learn a new chord, you might end up putting it in every song, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of like getting a new pedal. Oh, check out this new like flanger I got, and then next thing you know, you're using it on every song, and it's like, dude, why are you using flanger on every song? So it's kind of the same thing. You got to be real careful, but when you learn a new chord, you know, you can work it into a chord progression, try to find where it goes. It's really your ear that will tell you if it works or not. And I just, you know, the thing is, and it was very clear on this chart, you know, when we kept talking about the five, remember? All the fives, everything, oh, well, this now becomes the 5 of the 2, or the 5 of the 3, or 5 of the 6. Whenever we mention that, what we're ultimately saying is that, oh, we're going to create some tension that desires to be released. And so that's kind of what music is. It's perpetually, I mean, unless you have a one-chord song. And I would even argue that going to the C2 chord with that finger off and hammering it on is a tension that requires release. You're creating, it's like there's something missing. Ah, there it is. So even that creates tension. Or if I did the sus, it's like, when I do D sus, I'm implying kind of a G chord. So even in a one chord song, you could create tension. But that's really what music is about, is kind of creating this uneasiness at some level, and then easiness. Uneasiness, easiness. A lot of uneasiness out of the picture, and easiness. So for example, like, you know, A7, sharp 5, sharp 9, the flat 9 resolves nicely. You know, I'm creating as much tension as I can, and you can create a lot more tension than that too. I mean, you know, there's a lot of ways to create tension in jazz in particular, or in classical music too. Classical music does all the time. And so the first chord. So if I were to play What I Like About You, let's see, What I Like About You. So in this, let's see, because what? Yeah, so it'd be no. Now the D chord sounds funny because we set up the F chord, but this you know. We're technically in the key of C now, but we want to end on a G chord. So really, we're playing in the key of G, and we're justifying the F chord by calling it the flat major. Sorry, let me click on this. Okay, there we go. The flat major 7. Okay, or major flat 7 or whatever. Okay, now the next one that's fairly common is actually pretty darn common. Not as common as the flat major 7, but would be a B flat chord. And a B flat would be a flat major 3. And we're talking about in the key of C, in the key of G. So B flat, and that would technically be the flat. This would be the flat major 3. Okay. And generally that just wants to go right to G. So let's say we're in the key of D. I'm sorry, in the key of G. Right? So there's that F, that B flat. It's the 4 of the F. So you hear that every now and then too. So the 4 of the F and the that would be like the 4 of the like we did the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 5. That would be B7. Okay. In fact, the next chord we're going to do is E flat, and the E flat's the 4 of this chord, which this is the 4 of this chord. This is the 4 of this chord, which is the 4 of this chord. So if we were to do all those in order, it's kind of the reverse. It's the 4, 1. Okay, it's all over. So, who was it, Michael? You asked, how could you justify this this B flat? You could, and if in the key, like you had. You could justify it that way. You could just go down backwards in a circle of fourths. But I don't think you need to do anything. I think B flat major 7 can go right to D major 7. In fact, you could make a whole song out of that, which is almost the same as the Phase Dance by Pat Metheny, because B minor 7 is the minor sub for. So if I go. But that's one way you could justify that chord if you wanted to. So, please hit the bell for notifications. Oh yeah, cool. You could do that if you want to get a notification every day. Well, no, we're not every day anymore, are we? Do you guys miss those days? I mean, we were in serious quarantine mode. Of course, now the World Health Organization says, "Oh yeah, you can't get it from someone who's asymptomatic." I'm like, wait a minute, what? We shut down the world for this? Okay, so 49 watching. Wow, really? That's crazy. Let me entertain you. Well, not right now, 49, but anyway, peak. Yeah, that looks like the peak. Oh, 50 is the peak so far. Okay, so that B flat is one, and now the other one is the last one I'm going to talk about is the E flat, and not the most common use. Actually, that E flat to B flat to F to C to G, I could totally see using that. E flat is the flatted major 6. All right. And as far as where does that want to lead to? I mean, I think it kind of leads to F, but this is very almost corny sounding, but and so again, Michael, this answers, can reference your question about where does this B flat, how do I get back to D flat? And I don't think, or D major, I don't think you have to do anything. I think going there is totally fine. But if you want to, you could use the C as a passing chord from B flat to, and that's what oftentimes we do here. Now I'm going to show you, an E flat chord that you might be able to play if you have a hard time with bar chords. Okay, so we're in the key of G. Right? You've all heard that. It's almost corny. It's almost a corny sound. So, but that. Oftentimes when that major flat 6 chord is used, in the case of G. So here's 1, 2, here's a G major scale. Right? Go I gotta practice my scale. But in the case of that, the 6 is E, and then the major chord built on the flat 6 is E flat. Okay, So how can we play it? Let's play it. Okay, so I want to show you an E flat chord that you might actually be able to play. Okay, so play C. If you can play C, you got a shot at it. Put your pinky. Well, first off, let's look at the E flat chord. There are 3 notes in an E flat major triad, okay? E flat is the root, G is the third, and B flat. Okay, so those are the 3 notes in an E flat chord. E flat, G, and B flat. There's no quiz on this. So lift up a glass in celebration. That's one of our rules. If I say there's no quiz on this, you guys check out the. Did you guys check out the store? It's pretty fun. Yeah, you prefer D sharp. That's fine. I mean, you can call it D sharp if you want. The only reason I'm using flat is because I wouldn't want to call the chord the sharp major 5. That just sounds weird to me. A flat major 6 makes more sense. And that kind of, you know, the E flat could lead to the B flat. So anyway, we play this C shape, but I want you to add your pinky. So this is basically not. So note that on that E flat chord we have a G, and we have an open G string, right? Eat at Denny's, get bad eggs. So we have a G. We're going to use that G to help us let's see. So we're going to play this. We're going to use that G note to help us create a pseudo open E flat chord, because if there's an open string, it's an open chord. That's my opinion. Okay, so here's C. So nothing on the bottom. 3rd fret, 2nd fret, open G string, 1st fret, and pinky. And if you just slide that up 3 frets, so 1, 2, 3, up to the 4th fret, so now you're at the nothing on the bottom. You definitely don't want to hit the bottom because that's E. We don't want to E with the, that'd just be wrong. But we have 6, 5, open, so it's a tuning note. They're 5 and 0 are the same note, both G's. Then we have an E flat and a B on top. See, we have to have the pinky on top. We can't have open because that's an E natural. You don't want an E natural in your E flat chord. It ruins all the fun, okay? So there's technically a, you know, if you ever need, like, you saw me where, like, so like for creep, I could use that chord if I wanted to. And so basically what I'm playing is that 6, 5, 0, 4, 6, and this is E flat. And it's a pure E flat. It's not, we don't have to justify anything, go, well, it's really an E flat 2 or an E flat 4. No, it's just pure E flat. We only have E's or E flats, G's, and B flats in it. So it's a pure E flat triad. So it's a great cheater chord. But I don't even call it a cheater chord. I like the sound of it. Okay. Now the 4 of E flat would be A flat. So I don't know how easy we could justify, but that would be another chord that maybe you could go, okay, if I'm going to go to. But the funny thing about that is, I would almost call that, if we're going to do a song like that, I wouldn't think I'm in the key of G. I would think I'm more in the key of E flat, and this is the major 3, and this is the 4. So I don't want to get too deep into this, but sounds nice using Cage. What song? Oh, that was "Creep" by Radiohead. It's basically just G, B7, C major, and C minor. But I'm using E flat as a sub for C minor because it's the relative major to C minor. E flat is, okay? So I will probably scan this and put this up, but there's no, I mean, it's, you know, as far as justifying the E flat chord, I don't know. I mean, generally it's one of those ending chords where you go to the flat 6 to the 7. The Beatles actually used that too. But going into Sergeant Pepper's, Little Help from My Friend. So they used it. I think that's the chord progression, kind of what you would call the final cadence, the final amen or 5/1 cadence. Yeah, right. Technically, I didn't really play a song just then. The reason is because I've had stupid, battles with YouTube over that, and I like monetizing my videos. I like getting paid for my work. So if I do something where I'm benefiting from someone else's work, then rightfully I can't get paid for that. So I don't want to do anything where I'm going to have a takedown notice or I have to share my royalties. So and that's the thing where I'm talking about the when I'm talking about doing my beginner lesson series where I like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, like that, like progressive lessons. When I talk about doing that, I'm not going to put songs in there. As much as it makes it more difficult, I'm going to have to kind of create a song for the videos. So that means I have to write, original ideas or something. I mean, I may do parodies, but no, you're fine. You're fine, Pete. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble with that because I was kind of mumbling the words. And my opinion is you can't copyright a chord progression. In fact, clearly Radiohead, stole that from. Well, I don't think they stole it from the Hollies. Not that they probably had they probably heard that song, but I'm sure they were just writing and they came up with it. I don't think they were going, hey, let's cop that Hollies tune. Now, Paul McCartney said we nicked from the best, meaning we stole from the best, and that's true. I mean, they definitely were inspired by, Chuck Berry. They did a Chuck Berry song on their record. They were inspired by, who just passed away, Little Richard, which is crazy that Little Richard was still alive. He influenced Jimi Hendrix and Prince massively. And then also Buddy Holly was a huge influence on the Beatles. So much so I think they really, and then ultimately Bob Dylan a little bit. And even later, once they started their career, I think the Beach Boys inspired them too. So Paul was inspired. See, that was the thing. Paul stayed in London and he kept going to art galleries. He was the one that was experimenting with all the tape loops and cutting up pieces of tape and putting them in weird order and things like that. So, well, yeah, now George Harrison totally stole my sweet Lord, and he lost. That was a no. That's an example of one of the ones where that's a classic example to me of yes men. Where everybody is they're afraid to say, George, that sounds a lot like He's So Fine by the Shirelles. But he actually got sued and he lost. And I think that was a case where he should have lost, but he still owns part ownership of the song. But I'm just shocked nobody came up and said, and I don't think he did it intentionally. I'm pretty darn sure. In fact, I think that came out in testimony. He wasn't trying. He didn't go, oh, let's just do this song and then put new words over it. I don't think he did that. I think he. I'm gonna wear a guitar so I don't have to look at my belly in the. Well, that's another thing. If I change guitars, you can take a sip. Let me change guitars. I may have to tune this though. And my nail broke, so now it's just I got nothing. But then the Alan Thicke one, Robin Thicke and Pharrell, they got sued for their song. I disagree with that one. I personally, I think, in fact, that was a very chilling production thing. And I also think the Marvin Gaye, if he was alive, he never would have sued anybody. But his family, I get the feeling like they're just a bunch of greedy people that never worked. They've lived off the fruit of his labor their whole lives. So they're just generating millions now by suing people that are lovingly quoting production. Because what was it with them? it's right. And the funny thing was they didn't sue John Mayer for doing it, but they sued Ed Sheeran. So I don't know. I'm not. I touched my face. Everybody take a sip. Yes. The Verve, yeah, and that was one also that I think they were justifiably sued. It was by the Stones. That one was a justifiable one, and they lost that one. In fact, I don't even think they got to keep any of the song on that one. Oh, okay. Oh, Keith. Oh, thanks, man. So you've been paying attention. I've been at Abbey Road. In fact, I'm going to be at Abbey Road hopefully early next year. So I'm glad it reopened. I'm working on yeah. I mean, Holland Park is not that close to Abbey Road. I know I've been to Paul. I mean, not been to Paul's house, but I've stood outside Paul's house because when we were over there, he was in Japan when we were in London. But I took the boys to Abbey Road for the morning. We were there for like a couple hours. It was awesome, amazing, and got a full tour of the studios. Got to hang out there. And then, in fact, Frank Ocean was recording in Studio 3, which is upstairs. That was cool because Frank Ocean is kind of like the Radiohead of soul and R&B, in my opinion. Yeah, so Wimpole is where the Asher family. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, you're right. Okay, so Abbey Road is where really close. Paul's house is very close to Abbey Road. Yeah, and the Asher family was in Wimpole Street. Okay, I'll look that up in Marylebone. Marylebone. And that's not far from the Beckham home in Holland Park. Yeah. So because I teach Cruz Beckham guitar lessons. That's my London student that I do. And so anyway, but yeah, Peter Asher was a super nice guy, and I got to play. I was playing in the band, and we did his one hit, and he had Peter and Gordon. I think it was a big hit that they had. We did that song that night, and we were just hanging out. It was very fun. But let's see. Okay, so Diane. Let's see. I've got. Oh, right. You're talking about Diane. You're talking about George Harrison. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I remember that. The song. Yeah. No. And I mean, there have been a few cases. I mean, what was it? Luke Skywalker. Who was it? No. Who was it that sampled? It was like the beginning of sampling. They sampled Every Breath You Take. And I think Sting makes like $500,000 a year from that one song because he sued and got the rights to that. So just from that one song alone, he makes $500,000. One that he didn't even they stole his hook from. But dang. So these glasses are filthy. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna clean my glasses. Okay, so Diane, I promised you a story. Okay, I'm going to say that this person's name is Paul, and he wrote a song called "My Sweet Lord." Now, this is not. I don't want to say the name of the person or the song because I don't want it permanently etched on record. But this Paul person was probably the first composer that I ever worked for out here in Los Angeles. And I just started working with him. And I'd known him or known about him for a couple of years, and I really, really wanted to work for him. And we lived in Pasadena, and he and his family lived in South Pasadena, which is a separate city. And so I did a couple sessions for him, and things were starting to, and we became friends with the family, and Beth ended up, before we had kids, she was babysitting for them. And Beth, before we got married, she was in a ministry on Campus Crusade. She was on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ now just called Crew, and she toured with a band as a singer with a band, and they did this one song called, I'm going to call it "My Sweet Lord," written by this guy Paul, and he it's the most bombastic song, had a million changes in it, kept changing keys. It just didn't repeat. It was I would say it was a very amateurishly written song. But for some reason, this band put it on a record, and years later, like they put the song on the record in the 70s, and into the mid 80s, everywhere they went, people would, like every show they did, the audience knew this band and would start chanting, "My sweet Lord, my sweet." So they had to play it in every show because everybody wanted to hear it. So Beth is stuck singing this song, and she hated this song. She hated it. Well, she didn't know that Pete wrote it. She had no idea. So we're driving around South Pasadena in Pete's car. Me and Pete, or Pete's driving. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and Beth is in the back seat. And I mentioned the publisher or the record executive for Crusade, and Tom goes, "Oh," and I knew Tom knew this person because they put this song on the record, and so Tom said, "You know that song, My Sweet Lord?" And I knew what he was thinking. He was like, "Oh, I get royalties from them every now and then." And Beth started in the back seat started to say, "Oh, that song, and she got the H out, and I said, "Hey, Paul, didn't you write that song?" Really, I cut Beth off at the pass and said, "Hey, Paul, didn't you write that song?" And Beth was like, "Oh, did I say no? It's Paul." Yeah, I said Paul. And so again, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, except Beth. But it was one of the few times in my life where I've actually been quick enough to save someone from putting their foot in it. But that was it was pretty funny. So he did indeed write this song that's just like, oh man, what were you thinking? It's just but he was laughing. Paul was laughing because he's still getting money from this thing that was recorded in the 70s. He still gets like a royalty check for like $2 or something every year. And so I cut her off. But it's funny because I almost knew immediately what Beth was thinking. As soon as he said the name of the song, I knew Beth was thinking something, and I was ready. And she started to say, "Oh, I hate you." Like, ah. So it was pretty classic. But so Paul passed away years ago, sadly, and not his real name. But they all moved to and this guy he kind of brought me into the camp and introduced me to a lot of people. And then the earthquake in '94 happened, and prior to that, the riots, the Rodney King riots, and half of LA was burning to the ground. And so all of our friends that we just made, all these new friends, they all moved to Nashville. And so that's when I looked into moving to Nashville. I spent about a month kind of researching it and realized, no, I'm going to stay in LA. So, but yeah, so there's my story for today. And so what I may do, because I'm kind of fishing for ideas of what to talk about, I may go ahead and do this same lesson in the key of D so that we can talk about and in the process learn some other new chords. The cool thing about this, as we go up in sharp keys, like G is 1 sharp, D is 2 sharps, A is 3 sharps, and E is 4 sharps. As we go up into do this in different keys and go into sharps, we will the weird chords will actually be a little bit more playable. So, for example, the E flat chord in the key of D, the flat major 3 will be a B flat, but the flat major 7 chord will be not an F, but it'll be a C, which is very playable in the key of D. So But then the thing is though, then have a lot more bar chords like D and an E minor, F sharp minor, G, A, and B minor. We'll have 2 bar chords in the key of D, where we only had 1 bar chord in the key of G. Right? Yeah, B minor. So anyway, I think that's what we're gonna do. So was that a good story, Diane? The short story. Asher family in Wimpole. I'm going to look that up, Keith, and see if I can find that house. In my head, I just kind of, I'm sure it was probably closer to Abbey Road than it was to Holland Park. Our apartment, when we went to London, we stayed in, and this is before I knew the Beckhams, we stayed in, we were in Notting Hill. And that's actually really close to Kensington Palace. I mean, we were just like across the street from Kensington Palace. And then consequently Holland Park. But I didn't know that they lived in Holland Park and actually at the time, I don't know that, this is 2014, I don't know they had that house yet. What's crazy is if you go to the address, you can find it. It's on Holland Park in Holland Park in London. And if you do Google Street View, their house is blurred out. It's amazing. It's like, you know you're rich when, oh yeah, Discord link. Thanks, Diane. Discord link right here. All right. Now the story kind of lost me some viewers. Please post. Oh, it just did. Yeah. Okay. Alka-Seltzer in the house. Oh, great. Awesome, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, you can, a trick you can do, a totally legitimate trick, is you can tune. It actually helps in 2 ways. If you tune your guitar down a half, so instead of E at Denny's get bad eggs, it'd be E flat, add flat, Denny's flat, get flat, bad flat, eggs flat. So E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. If you tune your guitar down a half step, and then put the capo on the 1st fret, now you've got 2 things working for you. The strings are a little bit looser, so they're a little bit squishier, a little bit easier to push down, and the strings are at 1st fret height level, so they're also easier to push down. So you could do that, and now you're in standard tuning. So if you play an F chord, it's an F chord. If you play E minor, it's E minor, because you're tuned down a half step, but you're capoed up. You're compensating for it by capoing up a half step, if that makes sense. Okay? So yeah, that's a good trick. And like I said, it gives you 2 tools to make the F chord easier. All right? Okay, Alka-Seltzer, I'll see you on Discord. Most everybody you see here in the live chat populates the Discord community, and everybody's really cool. Be cool to each other. It's not a place to be trollish or snarky. We support each other and share. A lot of people share links. Keep it guitar based for the most part. Bruce is building me a cigar box guitar, 3-string cigar box guitar. Oh, and Bruce, I see you're still there. Yeah, the whatever you want to put on the. I prefer if actually you ask. I actually like this has. I'm sure there's some finish on here, but it feels like bare wood. So the less you can put on the neck, the better. I don't like a lot of lacquer on the neck because it gets sticky. It like your thumb when you're moving, and a lot of times on the I might be playing it with slide, but I'm playing it upright too. If I'm playing it upright, like a normal guitar, then I'm going to have my thumb on the neck, and if the finish is too sticky. In fact, some guitars I actually will sand the finish off just to have that bare wood feel. So you don't have to finish it if you don't want to. It's a satin finish, yeah. A satin finish at the most is what we'd say. Okay, and then let's see. That helps if you have to modulate in a song too. Sometimes adding a capo will, yeah, exactly. Also, knowing these chords will help you modulate songs. Now, if when I talk about the flat, the A7 or whatever, a lot of times you would use that if we were to go, say, the song was in G and we wanted to go to A. I just modulated up to A using the 5 chord of A, which is the 6th major chord in the key of G. Is that simple for you to understand? But in other words, those chords can help you too. You know, those chords outside the key. So you know these chords are the inside the key chords, and then these are outside the key chords, and then these are even more outside the chords we did today. So I can hold this up. I can scan this and post this later. Okay, I got some things I got to do, so I'm gonna get to that. But I hope everyone is well, and I will see. My plan is to see you Friday, but we'll see what happens. If I'm not going to be here, I will probably post something on Discord. Okay, so you can see that. All right. Special channel for. Oh, Thorn in My Side, Chords by Eurythmics is a good D song. That's good to know, Renee. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll check that out. We'll talk about on Friday. We'll try to do this whole thing in the key of D and do some stuff. So yeah, and hopefully I don't have anything weird going on in my. I don't have an infection or anything like that. This is the drag is if I have a fever from an infection, I can't go to the dentist. It's like, wait, what? So, okay. And get a shirt that says no quiz. Whatever, you know, like I said, I think on the coffee mugs I make $7 or something like that, or $7.99. I can't remember. Maybe I think it's $6.99. It's funny. So I do make a little bit. You know, I make less than 50% of the retail, but it's fine. I don't mind. It's just I think they're just funny. But I think the coffee mug's the coolest thing. You're holding up a coffee mug that says there will be no quiz on this, and you're having a conversation with someone that's like, oh, good to know. Okay. Anyway, God bless you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for watching.